About the campaign. How's it going?
Campaign is going well. Thanks for the opportunity to be on, by the way, Ed, Brandon.
Thank you.
Appreciate this very much. Campaign is going well. Look, it's a knockdown, drag-out primary, August 18th, election day. People are already voting via absentee ballots. Early voting starts soon. So we're knocking on doors daily, and people are either they're holding their absentee ballots and they're happy to see you, or they're saying, hey, we already voted. Best of luck. So it's happening. But it's a 9-way primary. I would say, and polling shows that it's going to come down to 4 candidates. We're among them, and it's very competitive. Very competitive.
What was that second question you asked?
One of the questions was, how much money has been poured into this campaign?
How much money? There is a lot of money that goes into politics, as everybody could probably imagine. We have been the grassroots campaign. Our job has been out there, being born and raised here, talking to neighbors, having served the district for 8 years, going back, talking to them about my record, and asking if they'll continue to support me. We have raised, and you asked this question, so I'll answer it. We've raised about $700,000 in this race. That's a lot of money. But we are on the phone dialing for dollars, asking for $5, $20, $100 at a time. Meanwhile, my biggest opponents in this race have millions. They've been either funding their own campaigns with the millions they've made. God bless them. They've done well in life. That's what they decided to do, to spend their money. Or they're people that are infused by Washington insiders who are frankly supporting, booing their race. Meanwhile, we're standing on our own through grassroots support.
Now, why would somebody from Washington infuse money into little old Fort Myers?
Well, we could all guess as to speculate why someone would want to do that. But frankly, your vote in Washington carries a lot of weight when it comes to power and how people want to be influenced. There's a lot of lobbyists. I've dealt with that in Tallahassee. Money talks. And so it does beg the question, when someone has millions and millions and millions of dollars coming to them through super PACs, where are the strings? Where are the strings attached? So we can all ask those questions. I could speculate, but I'm sure voters can do the same.
Now, for the people that are not familiar with who you are, do you want to tell us about your past, how you've established yourself here in Florida? You work for your current majority House leader for the state of Florida. Kind of just tell us about your history and what you've accomplished here in the state level.
And thanks for that opportunity. Again, thank you for listening or tuning in on Facebook. Dane Eagle. I'm born and raised here in Southwest Florida. I went to Bishopville High School, Pelican Elementary, Good Shepherd, St. Andrews, you name it. This has been my home. Went to FTCU for a year, got my degree from UF economics, and I'm a real estate broker by trade. I've had my license for 18 years here in Southwest Florida. I ran in 2012 because our economy had hit this area harder than most. We were all affected by the economic recession. Southwest Florida especially. Foreclosure crisis, tourism was gone, you name it, we were hurting. And I, being born and raised here, seeing my neighbors, family, some of them who are here struggling at that time, knew with my energy, my passion for politics, working with people, had to do something about it. I'm a fiscal conservative first and foremost. So I went to Tallahassee and put actions into my words. We've cut taxes by $10 billion in the last 8 years, cut our debt cut taxes by $10 billion, cut our debt by $8 billion, have over $4 billion in reserves. So that's what I've been doing these past 8 years, fighting for our community, fighting for the taxpayers, working with Governor DeSantis to get great things done. And I'm asking for your vote in Congress to continue working for you.
And, being a New York born and raised person, how much I appreciate your house and what you guys have done to keep Florida as one of the best states in the union,
huge.
Unlike what New York has really done. So a lot of kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
But, for all your accomplishments, there's always going to be the critics out there. And, we should talk about that and hear what the opposition is saying about you.
Sure.
Many on the far right, conservatives, have a lot of issues with your stance on gun control.
Sure.
Mainly because you supported the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act, correct?
Sure.
Just tell us, what is your stance on gun control? Are you going to protect our Second Amendment right?
Absolutely, we'll protect Second Amendment. I do not support gun control. I have supported and sponsored over, I'd say, 18 bills in the Florida House to protect and defend our Second Amendment. I myself am a gun owner. I've got my concealed weapons permit. I'm an NRA member. I've been fighting year after year to make sure that law-abiding citizens have access to firearms. In fact, my number one duty was making sure that we got rid of gun-free zones. And we see it in our schools every day. And this is exactly what the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas bill did. So that's what we need to get into. Of course, opponents want to attack people on that. The Marjorie Stoneman Douglas bill, first and foremost, made sure that our teachers have access to weapons. What we do in our society is we say, hey, you have the right to carry a weapon. You have the Second Amendment anywhere you might want to go. But the minute you step foot on school grounds, sorry, you don't have that constitutional right anymore. And that's where these people go and create mass violence. We saw that happen in Parkland. 17 people died. One of them defended his students with his life because he couldn't carry a gun that day. We named the program after him. With training, teachers have the ability to carry a weapon. So a vote for the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas bill was a vote to expand Second Amendment rights on school property. A vote against it was a vote against teachers' right. A vote against it was to vote with Democrats. 75% of Republicans voted for the bill. 75% of Democrats voted against the bill. And a vote against the bill was a vote against Donald J. Trump. What Donald Trump also called for in that bill was due process, not red flag laws, as my opponents want to talk about, but due process, constitutional due process through the Fourth and Fifth Amendment. Is someone like Nicholas Cruz, who's an extreme monster, who wants to wreak havoc on others, mental health issues, who should not have access to a gun, there should be a due process where a police officer can petition through a warrant to a judge and a process to overturn that. President Trump has called for that. We put that in there. He also called for retail provision. By no means does it take away anyone's right to keep and bear arms. My opponents will call that all day long. But look, what I've said all the time, I support President Trump 100%. I'm the only person in this race who can say that. If others say that, quite frankly, they're lying, because they're also saying they wouldn't have supported this bill. President supported this bill. I supported this bill. My Second Amendment record is the same as Donald Trump's.
So before I give it to Ed here for the next question, am I hearing this right? Is that your critics has got this all wrong when it comes to their criticisms with you on the Second Amendment?
Sure, they're twisting it by far, but also they're saying I support Trump, but I don't support that bill. They're saying that they would have voted with the Democrats by not supporting that bill, and they would have voted against Donald J. Trump.
So just a little bit of misinformation with that bill?
Absolutely.
Ed, you got a question?
Yeah, by the way, both candidates we had on last week said they were in Trump supporters
Trump
too.
supporters,
So, yeah.
but they probably also said they would have voted against that bill. So therefore, they're voting against Trump.
Yeah, I don't think
we didn't get to it, so I'm not sure.
So let me ask you about the coronavirus. You might have heard of that. It's something going around these days.
Wait,
and
what? Corona?
Yeah. And what is your opinion? The cases are spiking again all over the country, Florida, Texas. What is your opinion on how President Trump has handled the virus?
I think President's done a phenomenal job. I mean, what he's done is given the information to the people, to the states, and respect to the 10th Amendment, allowing the states to do the right thing. And we've seen some states mishandle it. We've seen some states do a great job. I, for one, think Governor DeSantis is a model for the nation and what he has done. He did decide to shut down for that short period, and I think he himself regrets that. The models he was looking at said Armageddon was on the way. He decided to act. Now you see, even with cases, quite frankly, they're spiking because tests are going up, but also they're spiking amongst the healthy population. We're not seeing spikes amongst deaths or amongst those being hospitalized. So here's what we're seeing. And what we've done in the past, in pandemics, with pandemics that were, quite frankly, far more deadly, what you do is you quarantine the sick. You isolate the vulnerable, and you let the general population get back to work and do the right thing, practice social responsibility. We're putting those guidelines out there. We're not saying, hey, if you're sick, go out. We're saying if you're sick, stay home, wear a mask, do the right things, but don't look to government for all the answers. Don't look to government mandates to guide you. Look to government for guidance. I think the governor and the president have done a great job balancing freedom and your personal health, and it's a fine line to balance that. But I think we need to look to personal responsibility moving forward, not government mandates.
Should there be a mandate for masks?
No, absolutely not. Again,
what do you think about all these little town governments that are mandating masks?
Look, I don't think that any local government should be mandating masks whatsoever. There's evidence.
Masks work, though.
There is evidence for masks. There's evidence against it. I'm not a scientist. The president's encouraging people to wear masks if it makes you comfortable. Look, if I go to Publix and they mandate it now, but what I've done all along is I see the workers wearing masks. And then if I go into Publix and I'm not, I feel like I'm offending them. So I put on a mask. But if I'm out and about, if I'm outside, or if I'm knocking on doors, look, I'm going to respect your distance because it's about me respecting your rights and your privacy. I'm not getting in your face and tell you to wear a mask. I'll wear a mask if I think it's appropriate, and I'm going to respect your distance. So I think it's a personal choice.
What do you think about the defund the police?
Absolutely ridiculous. And it's sad that our country is even discussing this.
I don't really get into, I try to be, obviously I come from a conservative perspective when I'm reporting, but if there's one thing I laugh at, and I'm sure you're going to talk about it, it's defunding the police. That's the one thing I am very vocal about. Oh, that is just the silliest, dumbest thing I've ever heard. We'll never get behind it.
The number one duty of our government is to keep its people safe. I mean, we do all these things we should in healthcare, you name it. That should not be a duty of the federal government.
And what happens when we don't keep people safe? What happens?
Chaos. People are dying in the streets. I mean, what's going to happen when you call 911 because someone's breaking into your home? Oh, and by the way, the left is saying you can't have a gun. The police will protect you. Well, now we don't even have the police. It's asinine. My mother-in-law is a former police chief of Kissimmee. My father-in-law was a deputy sheriff in Orange County. I mean, I come from a background of law and order. We have supported in Tallahassee these past 8 years, supported law enforcement, made sure our men and women in blue that are protecting and defending us, standing for law and order, that they're held up on a pedestal. They're putting their lives on the line every single day. Yes, there's bad apples in any industry, and what we should do to weed them out is fund the police better accountability, make sure they're attracting the best and the brightest that really want to serve, and not people that are in it for the wrong reasons. It's not about defunding the police, rather fund them better. Should there be any reforms at all? The black community feels like they're always singled out. Look, and I'll speak about the black community too, and Black Lives Matter. I know so many people, and I agree that there should be. President Lincoln stood for racial equality. All men are created equal, and women. So we are all for that. But what we're seeing through Black Lives Matter, and in other groups like Antifa, is a hijacking these movements, taking the best intentions of some, it into riots and chaos. That's what's completely wrong about this. Yes, maybe there should be some reforms departments. That's up to the individual police departments. We have a great job here in South. Radical left cities where the chaos and the riots are happening, run by radical Democratic mayors. Yeah, they might need some reform.
All right, we're going to take a question from the Facebook audience. Do you think it's possible to be a good conservative Trump supporter and still not agree with everything he tweets?
What was the question? Say it one more time.
Do you think it's possible to be a conservative, a good conservative, a Trump supporter, and not support his tweets?
Everything that he tweets? Look, the president, I talk to so many people, again, knocking on doors that ask, how do I feel about the president? I say, I support him 100%. And they say, I wish he wouldn't tweet as much. I say, but do you support him? They say, absolutely. And I ask people, what's your number one concern moving forward? Most of the time, 90% of the time, regardless of party, is, hey, I care about my pocketbook and I care about my safety. So who are you going to vote for? Biden or Trump? And yes, maybe sometimes he's off-colored in his tweets, but I think the American people also gravitate to that because they're not looking for that polished politician. They're looking for someone who's going to speak their mind. And by the way, he speaks directly to the voters when he tweets. I think the media hates that. And that's why they call him out, and they've been at war with them for 4 years, because he goes around them and talks directly to the people. Yeah, you don't have to agree with everything he says in his tweets. I think he's doing a phenomenal job regardless.
Something I pointed out last week when we were speaking with Byron and Christie is that it was either the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post. I think it was the Washington Post. Did a article about the top 20 most crime-ridden cities in America. 17 of them are run by Democrats, 2 independents, and 1 Republican, which happens to be here in Florida in Jacksonville. What's your thoughts about that? Are we going to see more of that if Biden gets into office?
I think we absolutely would. If this election season, November 3rd, we are going to decide, and we're seeing it right now. Look, I wish that it wasn't always Republican, Democrat, but there is such a fine line in the sand right now about law and order, about chaos. And you see it with the Democratic leaders, Nancy Pelosi, AOC, Biden, out there encouraging riots and saying, by the way, these are peaceful protests. No, they're not peaceful protests. Our Constitution does allow for peaceful assembly. This is not peaceful. This is riots in the streets. This is crime. This is anarchy. And our leaders on the Democratic side are supporting that. So yes, if you vote them through proxy, you are also voting for this kind of behavior. We cannot have that. It's time to make a stand.
Why should people vote for you and not Casey Asgar?
Well, I won't get into my opponents, but what I will say they should vote for me for is the experience. Experience matters. We have a lot of people in this race, some of them with no experience, some of them with little experience. I, by far, have the most experience. I've served 8 years. I understand the legislative process. We need a fighter to represent us in CD19 in Washington. This will be the 5th congressperson we elect since 2012. Some of them are great people. Some of them didn't vote nearly as what I would like them to vote. But the bottom line is we've had turnover, and it's been the laughingstock of Washington. Frankly, what we need is someone who's going to go up there and fight for us, be consistent, not only in their voting, but in conservative principles. And I have the record that shows that. Furthermore, I have proven that I understand the legislative process. I became majority leader at the age of 35 in the Florida legislature, the 3rd largest state in our union. Send me to Washington. I will get to work on day one, fighting for our principles, and I'm not going to turn tail and run home after a term or 2. I believe in term limits, but frankly, we need someone there for the next 8 to 10 years who's fighting for us, and I can do that. I'm the only one who can say they can do that.
So something that other critics worry about with you that they've just told me, in private conversations, are you going to be that guy that goes up there and looks AOC in the eye, looks Nancy Pelosi in the eye, all these radical Democrats, and say enough is enough? And are you gonna be that guy? People want to hear that you're going to be that guy for them to have faith in you. Talk about that.
Absolutely. And what I will talk about too is again, understanding the legislative process and how that works. Their own Democratic Party has put them in the corner. They are the misfits of their party. Nancy Pelosi can't completely ignore them because they have a following, which is sad. So she gives them credibility here or there. but they are in their own corner. We've seen that in Tallahassee too. We have our own little squad of Democratic liberals. What we do is we ostracize them and we ignore them. Their own party can't stand them. And it almost works to our benefit as conservative leaders. We say, hey, the extremists on your side are pushing for this and pushing for that. We need you to stand with us to stop that because your party's going downhill. And they get that. So not all the time is it, hey, I need to go to toe-to-toe with AOC. That almost empowers her and emboldens her. Yes, you got to call her out for her BS, but to go up there and say, I'm going to stand next to her and yell as loud as her, now you're just giving in to her agenda. The best thing to do, ostracize her, ignore her, make her irrelevant, get rid of her platform, and do the work behind the scenes. It isn't always about being on Fox News or having a microphone. It's about building coalitions to get things done. A lot of work happens behind the scenes.
There are 9 people in your race, and you mentioned that you have a record to stand on. So tell some of the people who might look at that ballot and say, holy moly, there's 9 people in this race. What did you do? What were your accomplishments?
So here are my accomplishments, and I can talk about a few in a nutshell. There are many. 8 years.
Ones, because I'm going to talk about that after you answer this.
I'll mention it quickly, and then we'll go into more depth. But again, I mentioned the economic issues. That was first and foremost the number one thing I went to Tallahassee to do. In my 8 years, we've cut taxes by $10 billion. We've cut our debt by $8 billion. We've got over $4 billion reserves, which was so important, especially with COVID-19 hitting and the economic shutdowns. We have states now that are calling. We talked about this, calling now for Floridians to bail them out when Floridians did the right thing because they sent leaders to balance the budget and put money in reserves. We already did it. I stood shoulder to shoulder with Governor DeSantis to ban sanctuary cities, to expand E-Verify, things that Congress has failed to do. They should be addressing illegal immigration. That's a federal issue, but we've been addressing it to the state level because they won't. Water quality, $1.3 billion in the last 2 years to fix the mess that we've seen, fighting for the unborn, fighting for the Second Amendment, fighting for veterans, fighting to get dangerous criminals off our streets. You name it, I've been there working for it. Proud of my record.
Now, another thing that's on the minds of every Floridian, especially South Florida, Southwest Florida, is water quality and restoring the Everglades. Sure. Although I feel like the word restoring is kind of a myth because if you're going to restore the Everglades, you have to kick out all of South Florida. Water quality. Right. What are you going to do to help expedite the process? We have a plan in place to fix our water quality. It's not like we don't have that in place. It's not like we're running around with chickens without heads. It's just a matter of funding. What are you going to do to expedite that process even further? It's been expedited a lot in the past 5 years.
It has.
I give a little bit of credit to Francis Rooney for that. He has helped with that.
That was his number one agenda item.
What are you going to do when you get to Congress?
We're going to continue that process. And I'll talk about what I did only because that tells you what I will do. So I mentioned $1.3 billion the last 2 years as majority leader fighting along DeSantis for these projects. You're exactly right. To restore the Everglades means that we are going to undo a 100-year-old problem, kick out millions and millions of Floridians. Look, when we first made Florida a state, Congress got with those living in Florida and said, we're going to make you a state. You need to drain the Everglades and make that a breadbasket for the United States. It worked. We had a mentality back then of conquering the land. That has changed. We now know that we need to live in harmony with the land in order for us to continue to thrive and our economy to do well. So we have changed course on that. We did pass a bill in the year 2000 with the plans in place that you talked about. But the problem is we then had 9/11. We had recessions. We had people that weren't focused on it. Hurricanes. So in the last decade, we have done more for this issues in the last 2 decades combined. We got to complete the projects. We do got to find ways to send some water south. We got the southern reservoir. We need the eastern and western reservoir. The water flows from the north and it goes in the lake and then it gets trapped. So we need to find ways to address that. Those plans are in place. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, as you said. We need to fund the plans. We got $1.3 billion these last 2 years. President Trump finally, it didn't happen under Obama. The last 2 years, we got $500 million from the federal government. Now, that's supposed to be a 50-50 cost share. There's some disparity there. We need people that understand that process to go up and fight for more funding. It's going to take money and time. That is the only answer.
How do 19 people get shot outside a funeral home in an American city and nothing gets changed?
Because these are radicalized cities that do not believe in law and order.
For people that don't, maybe just a little context. It happened in Chicago this past weekend, correct? This past weekend at a funeral of a guy who was actually gunned down and murdered the week prior. Someone went to the funeral. They think it was gang related, opened fired on the crowd, hit 19 of them. Thank God they're still alive. But go ahead.
This is an example of why gun control does not work. Chicago is probably has the most gun control than any other city in the United States. They're also the murder capital of the United States. What happens when you take guns away from law-abiding citizens, just like drugs? We have a ban on drugs, but people find a way to get drugs. Law-abiding citizens don't use them, but others do. You take away guns, law-abiding citizens won't lose them because they are law-abiding citizens. Criminals will. Then you don't have a way to defend yourself. That's exactly what's happening in Chicago. And then they're talking about defunding the police. Gang violence is out of control up there. You need more police. You need better trained police. You need better accountability in police departments. But you also need to arm them with the right arsenal to fight this gang violence. And they don't do that, and citizens don't have guns, so therefore they're shooting up the streets.
So a problem I have been constantly reporting about is, our God-given rights, the Bill of Rights, right? It seems like there's a different standard for conservatives with our freedoms and liberals. If a conservative speaks out, the most recent local example of that was Alfie Oakes.
Right.
He said Black Lives Matter was a hoax. He wasn't being racist. He was just saying the organization itself.
Black lives do matter, but the organization is a hoax.
That's where people.
I think he also said the virus was a hoax.
He said the virus is a hoax, but
right. Well, that's not a hoax. The virus is not a hoax.
But my point being, now you got everyone canceling contracts with them, and they're trying to basically, it's cancel culture. Let's cancel Alfie. Even though he really didn't say or do anything wrong, he just voiced his opinion. If I was his publicist, would I have told him to release that? No, hell no. I would have definitely made that a little more PC, just because he's a business owner and well known in the community. But you got everyone attacking him. The school districts canceled the contracts with him. Are we seeing an attack on our civil liberties?
Yes, absolutely. This is cancel culture. There's no question about it. I even got in this debate the other day talking about the Second Amendment, and I believe the person was on the other side of things, said, you Republicans are always talking about the Second Amendment. What about the First Amendment? I said, the First Amendment is first for a reason. Our founding fathers made the First Amendment because they didn't have a right to speak out against their king for fear of their life, liberty, and property. There's First Amendment for the reason. People take it for granted, and we even see the radical left, who is so great about the First Amendment, upset when you use the First Amendment. They like when you agree with them, but when you don't agree, then you don't have a right to your First Amendment. So then I said, the First Amendment is there for a reason. Second Amendment is there in case the First Amendment doesn't work out. I think it's a Dave Chappelle quote, which I love. And she was up in arms. No, Second Amendment. You don't get to choose which Bill of Right you want. They apply to all citizens equally. You don't get to choose.
Another great example about, the double standards. Although, yes, it's dumb maybe to have campaign rallies right now with President Trump and getting all those people in the thing, but it's still the right to peacefully assemble.
Correct.
He's not allowed to do that. He gets attacked in the mainstream media for that, but it's okay for everyone in Miami in the hot zone to have thousands of people, not all of them wearing a mask, maybe probably about half of them, but there's definitely a lot of people not wearing masks, and masks are not foolproof. Shoulder to shoulder with these Democrat politicians. The double standards are just, it blows my mind. And I'm not even trying to be partisan here. It's a real issue that true American patriots are battling every single day. Will you be that champion for them and preserve their civil liberties?
And we're seeing it again on the Democratic side. The George Floyd was a murder, and those police officers should be held accountable, and they are. But then you have the Democrats just using this as an opportunity to expand their agenda, and they're attending the funeral in thousands. But yet you've got the same mayors that were speaking out against local funerals in their own communities going to this funeral. It is a double standard. It is uncalled for, and absolutely I will stand up against it. Our rights are what we have first and foremost in this country, and without those we have socialism, we have dictatorship, and we cannot have that, or our country's going to fail.
So if people wanted to donate to your campaign, if people wanted to join your campaign, put signs out, anything, what do you want them to do?
Please go to daneeagle.com. You can even email me at dane@daneeagle.com. I'm accessible. Again, I'm born and raised here. This is my community. You could probably, my sisters are sitting over here watching. I mean, this is, our family is ingrained in this community. You can donate on daneeagle.com if you'd like. You can sign up to volunteer. We've got a big walk party going on tomorrow. We're putting yard signs out there. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Dane Eagle. So I'm encouraging people to come out and help. We got polling back today that shows, again, it's a four-way race, and we are in an incredible position to win this race, but we can only do it through grassroots support. I don't have the millions of dollars being infused into my campaign that my opponents do. We are going to do it through hard sweat equity, knocking on doors, talking to voters, getting our message out there. And if you're willing to donate, they'll certainly help us do so.
And you're working 7 days a week with a 1 month old.
7 days a week with the God bless my wife. When I'll tell a quick story because it's a great story. My wife and I decided to do something different. Last October 1st, we decided to get married in Iceland. It was the two of us, most perfect experience what we could ever ask for. We told our folks, and that was about it. In fact, my sister sitting over here, we FaceTimed them that day in my tux and our wedding dress, said, hey, surprise. 2 weeks later, we found out we were expecting. On my drive home from the confirmation of pregnancy from the doctor, I'd driven from Tallahassee to meet my wife. She was driving separately. I get a call from Congressman Matt Gaetz, a good friend of mine. I served in the Florida House. He's now serving the Panhandle in the U.S. Congress. He says, "Hey, I got word Francis is announcing tomorrow he's not running. Are you in or are you out?" I couldn't tell him at that time what I had just learned because my wife and I were keeping it to ourselves. But we talked over that weekend and decided our country needs bold leadership who's going to stand up for our rights. I've done so for 8 years. I can't sit on the sidelines. Our son is going to have an amazing experience if you decide to send me to Congress to live and learn from the sacrifice and the service that we're making. So we're in this to win it. I do have a 1-month-old at home, and he's amazing. I get to spend the late night hours from midnight to 4 a.m. rocking them, and it's been a great experience.
So it sounds like your wife is your rock, and I know Ed can attest to this because Ed would be nothing without Kim, his wife.
Right. Yeah.
So it sounds like every good man needs a good wife behind him, or a good partner in general.
Campaign politics, you can't do it on your own. It is if you're married or having a significant other, it is a two-person job, and she is behind me 110%.
And I totally understand the 1 a.m. thing.
Yeah.
At this point, it's mostly to get up and go to the bathroom, though, so that's nothing to do with kids.
I'm not far behind.
All the comments were great. A lot of supporters.
Thank you.
One question is, how do they get signs if they want them?
Please go on DaneEagle.com. There's a contact page there, or email me at Dane@DaneEagle.com. We'll deliver the signs. We're out tomorrow and all through the next 3 weeks, basically is what we have left. But we will make sure you get a sign.
Find Dane on social media. He's got a team of representatives that are ready to answer your questions. Reach out to him in the direct message. I'm sure they'll see it and get you whatever you need.
Thank you.
Thanks for
the
coming on,
opportunity,
Dane.
guys.
Good luck
Appreciate
in the
what
race.
you're doing. You got it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to get you a hat one of these days, and you're going to have to rep this in Washington.
I will do it. See you guys.
All right. As Brandon is getting ready to round up our next guest, Brian Hamman, stay with us, folks. I want to tell you about one of our sponsors.